Welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Barkley from Treasure Island PD in Florida. He has 36 years experience in law enforcement, and I'm really excited to have him as a guest on this episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm really excited. We talked a little offline, and you have a really compelling story and one of leadership and resilience, and I'm really looking forward to kind of diving in. But for those who don't know who you are, if you could give us a little background on, your 36 years and how you got into law enforcement, we would love to get some background on you.
Absolutely. As you said, 36 years in law enforcement. I spent my first 30 years in the city of Naples, Florida, which is just about 2 hours south of Treasure Island on the west coast of Florida. Went up the ranks, got to participate in multiple different things, community policing. I was in SWAT for 23 years. I pretty much did everything I got to do, all the great opportunities down there. I retired after 30 years there, and I got the chief's job up here in Treasure Island, and I've been the chief here for just about 5 years. And I originally got into law enforcement. I grew up in Miami, and I had several friends who were Miami-Dade police officers, and I did two ride-alongs, and that was it. I was in line to be a physical therapist. I was going to go to school for physical therapy, and two ride-alongs in Miami-Dade Police Department. Like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. So things carried me to Naples, 30 years there, and 5 years so far up here in Treasure Island and counting.
What was it about those two ride-alongs that sold you? Was there anything particular that just really stuck out to you?
It was the dynamics of the job which made it so different. Um, each ride along was completely different. This was in the late 80s. So Miami was in quite a bit of turmoil. It was coming out of the cocaine cowboy stuff and a lot of the drug cartels and stuff that was in Miami, which is where I grew up. And it was just the variety of the different things they get to do and see. And I really, I mean, I was a football player and I ran track in high school and stuff, and I really like camaraderie and teamwork. And it was a great example of teams, backup officers, sector partners, however you want to say it, the whole squad themselves, how close they all were. And I was like functioning as a team. And I never really thought of police work that way. You watch police shows on TV and you have, one or two guys in a car and you don't see the squad and the camaraderie. But I really like the camaraderie.
It's really interesting that you say that because I've had a few Chiefs on here who also played team sports, and I always related law enforcement to professional athletes, and I always kind of saw it that way. And I think that the more we have conversations, the more that is true. You guys are a team, and there's so many things that you learn from sports and physical activities that translate over to this career. And I think you just mentioned a few of them with the teamwork and camaraderie, but I also think it's accountability. It's picking each other up when they're down. It's we win together, we lose together. So I think that you're exactly right. I think that a lot of that does translate.
Absolutely. I think that's, where we've come full circle in law enforcement. I've been in the business for quite a while and I've seen wholesale changes in it. And, what goes around comes around is the type of thing now. And we used to chew up and spit out officers, when they'd see something stressful or something bad, we'd like, whatever expression you want to use, suck it up, buttercup, put your big boy pants on, whatever expression you want to use when there was something traumatic, you could tell somebody was being bothered. And, that's just, that's the name of the game. That's what we get paid to do. Whatever expression, the senior officers would say to the junior officers. And now we've come full circle realizing that, we need to take care of our people. We need to take care of our assets, and our assets are our officers, our men and women that are doing this on a daily basis. And I'm really pleased to see, the whole paradigm shift into wellness, and everybody can talk about it now. And it's not anything that was, that's forbidden to say. And if somebody has a hard time and you want to take a mental health day, you have something bad, I make sure my officers, if they're on a traumatic call or something, that, hey, are you okay? What did you see? Do you want to talk to somebody? Back in the day, we didn't do that. And, look at the results from officers. So
Yeah, and I love that you said that they're your greatest asset because I agree. I think that, even if you look at if we go back to like sports and you look at like professional athletes, if someone's out that disrupts everything. You want to keep your key players there and you want to keep them, as happy and healthy and high performing as possible. And so what are those resources and, tools that you can, make sure that they have available to them to keep them there? I know that you said, sports it was something that was always a part of your life. And then you said you wanted to be a physical therapist.
Correct. Yes. I was going to be into sports physical therapy. Yeah.
Okay, so how did that help you in those 36 years to stay physically fit? Do you feel like that carried on throughout your career and that was something that you always prioritized?
100%. I mean, I've, how do I, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. There's a lot of things in life you can't control. And I believe your physical fitness, unless you're limited by some type of disease or something, is something you can control.
Mm,
You know, you can't say what's going to happen to somebody tragically. You don't know what's going to happen, but I really believe that you can really take care of yourself physically. And I really feel it's my responsibility if I'm wearing this badge and wearing this uniform. And I'm a chief of police, but I'm still active. I mean, we're in a smaller beachside community and I have 20 officers. So I'm still out there. I'm not answering calls on a daily basis, but when I'm driving around, I'm pulling over cars and stuff. So I need to be physically fit. I need to be able to handle situations that pop up in front of me. And I think that's part of being healthy and why I've been able to be in the business. And it's when I say 36 years, it's kind of a shock to me because I remember when guys would retire at 18 and 20 years. And I thought, wow, that's a long time. And now I look back at them, I jokingly say, oh, rookies, come on, you got a whole nother career ahead of you yet. But, and people get out of the business for different reasons, but physical fitness has always been not only to keep myself physically fit, but I use it for a mental fitness too. I
yeah.
mean, that's my Zen time. That's in I go to the gym, I put my music on and whatever I'm listening to, anything from classical music to rap to whatever I'm in the mood for that day. And I zone out and I do what I have to do and I push myself. And it's a kind of a time of reflection. That's my stress reliever. My wife, who's my number one supporter, who I wouldn't be where I'm at without my wife, and she knows that. I'll come back after a hard day, and she goes, "You go to the gym?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I'm not there for hours and hours. I'm there for an hour. I put in a good workout, and I leave. But it's important to me to. It's kind of my unwind time. You can reflect on everything that happened during the day.
Yeah, and I think that too, and I don't know if you feel this way, it's like the opportunity to be present and to like not think about whatever happened before or like have anxiety about what might happen in the future. For me, like when I go, it's like I'm super present. I'm training myself to do really hard things that I'm not necessarily motivated to do. Like when I go, it's not because I'm motivated to go, it's because I make it a priority to go. But you're training yourself mentally and physically to do hard things, which is training you for future hard things. It's a practice where if you don't do hard things, you're not prepared for hard things. And so that's one of those training methods I think that helps you to be super present, but also to build that mental and physical resiliency.
That's why I feel bad for people at the gym that are on the equipment and they're scrolling through their social media and they're on stuff. I'm like, no, no, this is your time to unplug. Like you said, be present.
Yep, 100%. So you have been the chief of police for Treasure Island, Florida, and it's funny because before we're like, we have to indicate that this is Florida. It's
Yeah,
not the casino in Vegas. It's
right,
not.
right.
You said there was another one, maybe in
San
another
Francisco.
in
Yeah,
another state. Yeah. Um, you've been the chief of police at your current agency for 5 years. Um, there were a couple incidences that happened pretty closely together, and we
yep,
talked about this, and I would love if we could hear it from your words,
sure,
the two incidences that you experienced in your current agency.
sure. Let me paint the picture. So for those of you who
Okay.
don't know, Treasure Island, we're a beachside community. We're one of the barrier islands in Pinellas County, which is part of the Greater Bay Area. And to wind that down even more, we're directly across the causeway from the city of St. Petersburg. So that kind of paints a picture of where we're at. Um, we have Barrier Island south of us, St. Pete Beach, and all the way up to the north is Clearwater Beach, which is a pretty popular town. So we are your typical Florida beach town. Hotels and motels on the beach. Our claim to fame is we have one of the wider beaches on the west coast of Florida. So we actually drive our police cars, not civilian cars, but we drive our police cars and have UTVs and stuff on the beach. We have a really, really wide beach. And we have a permanent population of about 6,500 residents. But when we have heads and beds and all the condos are full during our peak season, we have anywhere between 18 to 20,000 people. So we swell up a little bit. So in this past hurricane season, which a hurricane season for non-Floridians runs from June until the end of November. Um, Last season, 2024 hurricane season was pretty active. They were predicting a crazy season, and it got off to a really slow start. And Floridians, and I've been through many hurricanes in different areas in Miami and in tropical storms in Miami and in Naples. Um, and one of the things I heard when I came up here to Treasure Island is oh, don't worry, Chief. And this is a famous saying: "Don't worry, Chief. The water's never come over the seawalls here." I'm like, yeah, okay, well that's fine. So I was here for about a year, and then my wife and myself bought a house on the water in a neighborhood that's very, very close to Treasure Island. And that was our dream, to always live on the water. We're boaters, we're active outdoors people, and that'll play in this in this scenario a little bit later. So we're going through this crazy hurricane season, and a couple storms went up to the Texas area, and we have this hurricane which forms and starts coming up the Gulf of Mexico. And this is important because, and the way I'm going to describe these two storms, we had two different storms. We had a storm that passed by us, and then we had a landfalling storm. The interesting thing is Hurricane Helene was over 100 miles in the eye. People look at it, and if you're not familiar with hurricanes, and I'm not trying to insult anybody who knows what I'm talking about, but you look at a point of a hurricane, it looks like a pinpoint on a map. Mm-hmm. When in reality, these things are 2, 3, 400, 500 miles wide. These are absolutely enormous storms. So you feel the effects far out for them. So this is worst case scenario. So this is a Category 4 storm going up the west coast of Florida. Even though it's 100 miles off, it was pushing all this water up along the coastline. And Hurricane Helene hit us on September 26th of 2024. And the crazy thing about this, and we always say this jokingly in law enforcement, is why do these storms always hit at night? It started in the evening, and our most damage and most stuff happened at night. So we know this storm was coming. And in the past, they do storm surge prediction, which is how much higher the water is going to be than normal. That's your storm surge. So we were hearing predictions anywhere from probably 4.5 to 5, 6 feet. And then they started changing the predictions. They went all the way up to 8 feet. And I will say that a lot of the people who had been here for a very long time, people in emergency management in the county and all this stuff, were saying, yeah, that doesn't sound right. Because normally they call it, when they do these predictions, it's called the best worst case scenario. So they're trying to say this: if everything lines up and it is the worst case scenario, this is as bad as it can possibly get. So normally it's less than that, and everybody kind of breathes a sigh of relief, and you go about your business, you mop it up, and you're good to go. We're seeing charts and predictions on this, and the prognosticators and the predicting people are saying, the forecasters saying, hey, this is going to be really bad. So we do an evacuation order for the island. And the thing is, when you're evacuating, we have different evacuation zones saying how high the water is going to come up, and there's different areas of the county. The entire Treasure Island and all the barrier islands are in evacuation zone A. So like if there's anything, we're getting evacuated. So we've evacuated probably 3 times in the last 5 years since I've been here. Wow. Which is a prediction. It's a predicament for us. We have to evacuate our records and stuff out of our police department. And let me tell you this: our police department was a single-story structure, probably about 50 yards from Boca Ciega Bay, which is our main bay. So that'll play an important role in the rest of the story as well. So the storm's coming, we're evacuating people, we're telling what's going to, and I will say that complacency paid a huge role in this. It was a big problem because people like, water's never come up the seawall before. I've been here for 30 years. I've been here for 40 years. It's never been an issue before. I'm going to worry. I'm going to ride it out. So we're giving the messaging from police and fire saying, hey, this isn't good. This is what the predictions are. We will not be able to help you when the water reaches a certain level. You can't call 911. And I use the term, you can't chicken out in the middle of a storm because we can't help you. Mm-hmm. You can't call 911 when there's 4 feet of water on the ground and expect us to drive. We don't have any vehicles that can traverse that, or boats or anything else, especially in the winds going to 50 miles an hour as well. So the storm comes, passes by us. We knew we were in trouble that morning because we had actually 2 storm surges. If you look at a chart, we have kind of a small wave in the morning and then the huge wave in the late afternoon. And we knew we were in trouble because we already had some minor flooding from the storm surge in the morning, which is only 2.5 feet. And what happens is the wind just blows the water. And if you're familiar with the Tampa Bay area, it doesn't allow the water to come out of Tampa Bay. So the wind and the storm is pushing this water, holding it up against the coastline and holding up in the bay. So there's really no tides. There's no high tide and low tide. It just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And that's what happened in our situation. And so we evacuate the island. My officers leave the island when the wind gets up to a certain point, but this time it wasn't really wind; it was for water. So we're very careful with our officers because we know where our low hanging areas are, and we have a fallback plan saying, we need to make sure we have an officer here. We block access to the island on a causeway, and we have a fallback plan. When the water gets a certain height, that's time for them to get out of there because our emergency operations center is off island, obviously, out of a flood zone. And we had the fallback, and we had to do the fallback. I believe it was around 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. We still had power at the island in that part, so we were hooked up to some webcams and stuff, so we saw what was coming, including my house. So I'm in the EOC and I'm on my phone, and I have to evacuate. My wife and I have a 10-year-old Great Dane, and I have to evacuate my wife, and she went to a hotel in downtown St. Petersburg. So I'm watching it in my own home, and I did as much mitigation as I possibly could. You try to protect your home, and you really don't know. You're sealing it up, and my wife is, like I said, she's been through a lot of these storms, and she knows that she's by herself. She has to take care of things because I'm busy. I've been in law enforcement my entire career, in Florida here. So when there's a storm, I'm gone, and so I have to make sure she's safe so I can do my job. And then I'm watching on webcams, and at the same time I'm watching the city flood. I see the water rising up in my own home, and then right when the power cut off, I saw that my home was starting to flood. So as that moment that I literally just kind of pushed myself back from the desk a little bit, took a deep breath, went out and walked in the hallway, and I knew that this was going to be really bad. I knew my home was flooded. I knew the city was flooded, but you don't really know the extent of it because, like I said, we lost power and then it was dark. So we had to wait for the water to recede to get back on the island. And it was pretty heartbreaking. During this whole time, police and fire were receiving 911 calls from people. And remember what I said, our population is about 6,000. I really don't know how many people stayed on the island. I don't want to say half. I think we had better than that, but we logged 108 911 calls from the time that we could not respond to people. And if you want to talk about heartbreaking and frustration and every emotion as a first responder you hear for both police and fire, and we had one person call us up and say they thought they were having a heart attack. They didn't know what to do because their water was rising in their house and it wasn't stopping. Mm-hmm. And to put an end note on that, after the storm, we went back and we ended up having 3 fatalities on the island just due to storm surge. We had 2 people that drowned. We found one person who was outside, like between 2 homes. We were assuming they were trying to walk somewhere and they got swept up in the water. We had another person that drowned in their home. They were trapped by furniture. And we had this person that did have the heart attack in their home, but we couldn't get to them. Mm-hmm. And to say that that's frustrating because it's in your nature to help and you want to help these people, and it's just, you can't do anything until the water goes down. And the city was absolutely devastated. So we had about 7.5 feet of storm surge. So in a lot of structures on Treasure Island, that would put about 4 feet of water, 3.5 to 4 feet of water in their homes. Now, this was, like I said, it wasn't a wind event. And so this was water up, water down. So you're looking at things other than boats being everywhere, blocking our main causeway. We had a marina that put all the boats in the parking lot, and then they all got washed across the street. We had cars that floated all over the place. It was pretty incredible. And then we went to our police and fire department and realized that they were absolutely destroyed. They were completely flooded out. We had low water levels up to the heights of our desks. Wow. So I had a few minutes there, and I was able to go to my house. And my wife is, of course, texting me saying, "How's our house? How's our house?" And I had the gut wrenching time. I said, "No, we got flooded. We had flooding in our house, and we had just finished remodeling the house, so that was kind of heartbreaking. We'd literally been remodeled for 2 months." But there was quite a few times, and it was a few days afterwards. It was probably day 2. I'm sorry. So let me back up a little bit. So we blocked the causeway because we're in search and rescue efforts, And then we started calling for help. We started putting in first aid assets in an emergency operations center. And so I have a 20-person department. Everybody's on duty. We're doing Alpha Bravo shifts, 12 on, 12 off. And I have people at the causeway, officers on the checkpoint there, and we're turning people around. And if you want to hear how angry people get when you tell them that they cannot go to their homes because it's not safe yet, the words and the stuff they call my officers and all that, and I have to tell them, I have to keep telling them that they're not yelling at you, they're yelling at the situation.
Right.
And these are people that, I mean, we have a lot of support here at Community Day. We get along with the community. They love us. We're very, very supportive of our community. But you can tell somebody they can't go to their house and they can't see it. It's unbelievable. Um, at that point, we realized that this is going to get really bad. And to tell people, to tell the officers, I had officers that wanted to work the checkpoints and stuff, and I had to pull out of there. We had to rotate people around there because it's not mentally good for anybody to hear that and have to keep people saying no. And people come up absolutely devastated, crying, and says, "I need to see my house. I need to know what's going on. I need to get this." And then the worst part was people that wanted us to, oh, my grandmother didn't evacuate, my mom didn't evacuate, my dad didn't evacuate. So then we started doing all these notifications and stuff, and then for the couple people that were deceased, that was heartbreaking for people to realize that they had lost people in that. So you want me to take a breath here, and
No,
you want me to keep going?
I just can't even imagine, I live in Phoenix. We don't have
Right.
weather out here, and so I couldn't even imagine. And I think the thing that hit me the most is that I c- I can't imagine the mental toll that
Yeah.
that would take on your agency, because I'm imagining it's all hands on deck.
Oh
And
yeah.
you said it's 12-hour shifts, and
Right.
it's stress, and it's devastation, and it's sadness, and then if it's your home too. So that's what's going on in my mind, is not only as a community, how absolutely devastating that would be, but the toll that it would take on your agency and your people is kind of what's going in my mind.
It was really tough when we're telling officers go to the station, go to your lockers and recover anything you can. And then we also have to go through it. You want to be emotional about it, but you got to keep moving because there's a process for everything. It's like, okay, we have to document everything we lost in the storm because we know there's forms to fill out. There's all this stuff to go on. But I lost. It's kind of funny. I lost something kind of personal to me, and I thought I had it up high enough. I was kind of mad at myself for not taking it out of my office, but you don't think worst case scenario. Now everybody will, but you really don't. And you got so many people in your ear saying, it's not going to happen. We're protected by an old Indian mound here in the area, and all the storms always go the other way. But the problem is we were part of what, unfortunately, and I hate being part of this, is an unprecedented weather event. And that's what they called this. This was unprecedented for the Tampa Bay area. People flooded more than they have in over, I believe, is 100 years. So there's nobody alive now that remembers that storm. It's all in the history books. But when you're telling officers, hey, go clean out your locker and this, and what I said I lost is, I call it the book of me. And it's something that as a rookie police officer, something you put all your letters of appreciation in, your certificates and everything else. And that got soaking wet for me. And to this day, it's in a garbage bag in my house, in my garage, because I still don't have an office yet. And I haven't even opened it to see if I can even recover anything out of there. But that's, 35 years of stuff for me that was personal that I've taken with me. And that was pretty devastating. And like I said, I haven't even opened it. I haven't mentally prepared myself to open up this big fat 3-ring binder of my accomplishments to see, what's survivable and what you can get out of there or not. But um, let me fast forward a few days after that. So what happens is, probably 2 3 days after the storm, people start gutting their home. So when I say gutting, what they're doing is they're cutting their drywall out, and you pretty much throw all your possessions on your front yard. Everything you want to throw away becomes a giant junk pile. And I've been through lots of hurricanes before, but they've just been like horticultural debris, tree limbs, branches, stuff like that. Never have I been part of a storm surge with flooding inside homes. This is completely different. So what you have, you're driving by people's homes, And this is what my officers had to endure, and I'm looking at, and this was in my own neighborhood. I couldn't get away from this for months. Is everybody's possession is on their front yard, clothing, furniture, rugs, carpeting, drywall, anything. You have to gut your house because, and here's the gross part of it, some of it is seawater, some of it is sewer, some of it is mixed. It's horrific smell. We mandated anybody going in our police department a couple of days after the storm when they were still recovering their items, you had to wear a mask when you're in there because it was so nasty. And the mud and the stuff that was inside there was so slippery. It was literally a hazard to go in there. Um, so picture these mountains of 6 to 8 feet tall in people's front yards throughout the entire city, including the commercial businesses, including the hotels. Everybody, all the hotels that weren't elevated, their first floors were, the water pretty much blew through your first floor windows. Um, we had an area south end of our town called Sunset Beach. They had over 4 feet of sand over the main road. There's one road that goes down in there, 4 feet of sand over the road. So they came and they plowed with these giant bulldozers. They plowed one lane so we could get emergency vehicles down there. We wouldn't allow them to go down there with their cars. And that piled up the sand. The sand was 6.5 to 7 feet tall on either side of the road. So it looks like you're up north through one of the worst blizzards you can imagine. But it was sand. Some people had 2 and 3, 4 foot of sand in their homes down in that end of town. So, we're days into this event, and then people are talking, we're plugged in, we're moving, we're in the mode. I've requested assistance from, through the Florida Police Chiefs Association. And we have a system. Our first group of people came up from Dade County, from Miami-Dade County, which was really cool. It was pretty emotional for me that, the first people that came to help was the area that I grew up in. It was City of Coral Gables, City Miami Beach, and City Miami. I thought that was really neat because, like, my life has come full circle, and here's my brothers and sisters in law enforcement coming up from my old hometown to help out here. And it was awesome when they come up in this giant convoy and they look you dead in the face and say, Chief, what do you need us to do? Which was amazing because, we're probably on day 2 or day 3 at this point. So we're rocking and rolling. We're moving along. The officers are incredibly resilient. They're doing things that they've never done before. They're getting out and talking to people and hugging people because everybody is traumatized because you've lost so much of your stuff. So the officers are handing out bottled water. They're seeing if people need food. Now, remember, this is September in Florida. So this is hot and humid and nasty. There's no power. There's no air conditioning. There's no relief from this. So our officers were really doing wellness checks on people too, because you go into this robotic mode because you don't want to believe what's happening, or you're traumatized and you're not functioning the right way. So we were checking in with our officers a lot. And the first thing I did, I should back up. First thing I did was to make sure that how my officers' homes were. This is like day 1. I said, any damage to your house? And we had a couple of officers who lost some stuff too. And, I was one of them, unfortunately. But we wanted to make sure they were taken care of because, like I said, if they aren't able to function at work, that's why we always have hurricane plans. Say, make sure you have a plan for your family because we need you to be fully focused on your job here. So make sure your family's okay. Make sure your house is okay. We give everybody, before we call them in for the Alpha Bravos, we give them, a good 6 to 8 hours to go get their house bundled up, take care of their family. And everybody was good. Fortunately, nobody was injured from the police or fire department or anything else. But it's a grim reality when you hear, we're a population just over 6,000. We had 3 fatalities here. And it's horrific to think that. If they would have heeded the warning, they probably would have been okay. So skipping back ahead, a few days after the storm, the City of Miami guys are here working, and then somebody starts saying, hey, there's another storm in the Gulf. And we're literally, I don't want to tell you the words that came out of our mouths, and people are saying, because we thought they were messing with us. We're like, hey, that's not really funny. Mm-hmm. Blankety blank, blank, blank. We're all dealing with this right here. And then sure enough, we start pulling stuff up. Now here's the kicker. So we have help, and help's arriving from everywhere, and it's awesome. It's coming from the state. It's coming from the feds. It's help is coming, and it's good. And we're getting water and comfort stations for people. And since our police and fire departments were wiped out, we were having these temporary buildings, which we're still in, by the way, temporary buildings being delivered. And then all of a sudden they say, we're pulling all of our assets out. We got to put them somewhere safe. until the other storm passes through. And we're all looking at each other going, are you kidding me? So literally 10 days after Hurricane Helene, we get hit by Hurricane Milton. Now, my biggest fear from Milton was if we have another storm surge like this, remember what I said, all the debris out in front of everybody's house,
Hmm.
we're not going to be able to move around the city. There's going to be furniture and clothing and you name it out in front of everybody's house is going to get
Right.
spread around. It's going to be beyond chaotic. Um, the only thing they gave us a reprieve from Milton was that it made landfall south of us. And for you non-hurricane people, what that means is the storm surge is always going to be south of the eye wall. So if you're north of the eye wall, you're not getting the storm surge. And I will tell you, we're watching this thing come in. We're at another EOC, and we're watching this come in. And then we got a very excited report from a meteorologist, somebody watching a tide table that's saying we have reverse surge in Tampa Bay, meaning all the water is leaving Tampa Bay, which meant we weren't having a storm surge. And even though we were going through 115-mile-an-hour straight line winds and 19 and a half inches of rain, we were cheering because we knew we didn't have any more storm surge. But
Wow.
what Milton did, Milton brought wind from the opposite direction that Helene did, even though Helene wasn't much of a wind event, and it started to blow everybody's roof off. So now we have roofing
What?
debris, and the nails from the roofs are all over the road. I won't even tell you how many flat tires we had. So it was a little freaky. So about 2 days before Milton hit, we didn't have any more help. Everybody got pulled out. They didn't want to leave, but they had to. And I'll never forget the city of Miami guys were like, Chief, we don't want to go, but we have to go because they pull them back. They pulled all their temporary housing facilities away and stuff like that. And they pulled out. So then we were alone again, for 2 days until Milton hit, until they could come back 24 hours, about probably less than 24 hours after Milton to bring the resources back.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yes,
I hope I
absolutely. I
didn't
know I've
ask too
been
much.
talking nonstop.
No, one, I want to know, how did this challenge you as a leader? But also, how do you prepare for something like this as a leader? And then beyond that, like, how do you, because you talk about being in this for service, and we know that that's like in the fabric of who you are as law enforcement is to be in service of others. And so, how do you not only keep up the morale of your team in something so devastating and chaotic as this, but how do you also take care of yourself?
Yeah, I
I know
had
that was
I
a
had
lot all at once,
no,
but
no, no. I'll go through it and please add. Those are excellent questions. I want to cover all of them. And if I skip one, please re-ask that. But I had a couple moments. I had a moment where it's hard for me to even say this without getting emotional. I had a moment where the sun was coming up. It was about 7 o'clock, 7:15 in the morning, and I was driving back towards our EOC. So I was on the island, and towards EOC would be facing east. So the sun is coming up. We weren't allowing anybody to drive on the island at that time because it still wasn't safe yet. We were allowing them to walk. So you could leave the island or come to the island walking. And there was literally a line of people with like one suitcase. Like that's the only stuff they could recover going up and over the bridge. And I literally I pulled off the road. I pulled into a parking lot and I said a little prayer for them and me and my officers to say, we need to get through this. That was one of my probably my biggest moments. I was alone, um, but I'm not afraid to admit that it was affecting everybody.
Mhm.
But I'm very much into the never let him see you sweat mode of leadership. I don't want to let them know how bad it is. I'm always going to be the positive one. I'm always going to be the move forward. I've always led from the front. That's an effective style of leadership for me. I empower and I lead from the front. I like giving people tasks to see how they do to develop future leaders. So, you say, how do you prepare as a leader for this? You really just buckle down and say that this is why I'm here. I had a lot of people reach out to me, a lot of fellow police chiefs, a lot of people, chiefs that I've worked for, a lot of cops that I've worked with and for over the years saying, you got this, you're the right guy for the job, you are there for a reason. And that really boosts you up. That really picks you up and say, okay, so you take a deep breath and you just keep moving. Um, I had a moment personally where we have the flood mitigation company was at my house, and of course, my wife is handling everything as she does after the storms. And she called me on the phone and she started crying, saying, I don't know what to do. And I said, I'll come home. And I went to the house and we literally hugged and cried right standing in our living room as the people are tearing our drywall out and throwing our furniture out and all this other stuff. And it was, that was emotional as well. That was a personal moment for me where, right now I'm a husband and I'm not a police officer. I'm not the chief. I don't have all these other people depending on me in Treasure Island, but I had to be a husband. I had to be there for my wife at that moment.
Yeah.
Um, and we both needed that, little moment of reflection and saying, we'll move on, we'll rebuild, we'll get going. And here we are almost at the 7th month mark, and my house is probably about 85% done. Not done yet. We're getting there. Um, but how do you prepare that as a leader? I guess everything leads to this moment. All your other little experiences. I mean, my big, I don't want to say is a claim to fame, but I teach a future police chiefs class for the Florida police chiefs here. And one of my big things was when I started as the chief here in Treasure Island, 1 week later, COVID started and the world shut down. So that was like, oh, that was my big thing, is I had all these grand plans of coming here and being a chief. And all of a sudden COVID. So I had to kind of toss that notebook to the side and forge a new path here. Well, now these two incidences have really kind of eclipsed that as a moment because we're still going through it.
Yeah.
Um, we're in temporary facilities right now. They're tin cans. They're okay, but they're very, very temporary. We have lost some officers. They haven't really said that directly they left because of the storm, but some and they've gotten out of law enforcement. So I mean, we checked in with as many people as we can. Our HR director just amazing with making sure we had EAP services for everybody. I tell you what, this is really cool. We had the therapy dogs come in. Therapy dogs would come and make the rounds in the EOC. And I tell you what, you want to make people smile, you bring a dog in a room with a wagging tail and
100%.
everybody goes bananas. Um, did I answer all of them?
Yeah, I think just like how do you keep morale? Like what how
I
I know you said like keep moving. Like how do you train that resiliency, or how do you keep people moving when everything is so hard to keep going?
I believe in the nuts and bolts of it. I like to move people around a lot. I don't want anybody. I mean, you get people that are really good at certain things, as long as that isn't like traumatic. Like I said, at these checkpoints, when we had these checkpoints up, we had a couple of guys. Oh, I'll do the checkpoint. I'm like, yeah, that's okay, but we're rotating everybody out of there out a couple hours because that's really hard. I mean, we
Yeah.
made some arrests on the checkpoint, and you don't ever want to have to do that. But people saying, "Oh, you're gonna have to throw me in handcuffs" and all this other stuff, and something you don't ever want to do. And like I said, the profanity coming from people and there's bad people too. I mean, we were tasked with protecting the residents from looters.
Mhm.
And it's incredibly humbling. This happened at my house. My wife sent me pictures of, and it's a trash pile, but to have people from in town come and start picking through your trash pile and to salvage stuff, it's hard to find the words to that. It's like it's really, really, really humbling. But people were coming through there, and we had people that were trying to steal, and the looters were coming in. So we had to protect that. So I was giving my officers multiple tasks, but I was checking in with them too. Myself and my captain were really, really making sure I saw, since we're doing Alpha Bravos, I made sure I saw every shift. I saw the midnight shift going off, saw the day shift coming on, and the relief officers too, all the officers that were helping us from out of town. I talked to everybody and I thanked them. And I thanked them. And everybody who came, I says, thank you so much. I shook everybody's hand and I said, you have no idea how much this means to us. And I meant that from my heart. And I had an award made. It's a award bar with our kind of our city symbol on it. We have a pirate theme. So we have a pirate on our patch, and because we're in the Tampa Bay area and stuff. And so I had these specific awards made, and I'm going to start what's called my Chief John Barkley tour of gratitude as soon as things calm down here a little bit, and visit some of these departments that came to help us, so I can hand deliver these awards because that's how much it meant to us. And I told them, I trust me, if you guys are ever in any kind of a situation, I may not have a lot of officers, but you're going to see Treasure Island officers anywhere where anybody needs help, because that meant so much to us and so much to my officers. And after Milton came, we started getting officers from the Palm Beach County and Florida Atlantic University and a lot of the Boca Raton Police Department, a lot of the departments from Palm Beach County came over and helped us. for months. They were literally here for almost 2.5, almost 3 months.
Um,
And my officers kept, and this is when you say how you keep your officers, the morale up and stuff. My officers, they want to take care of their own city. And they get that. I said, no, we're going to have help. We normally have 3 to 4 officers on the road at a time. And so I was doubling that. And then I just pulled it back a little bit. But my officer's like, no, chief, we're good. We can handle it. My sergeants, we're good. We can handle it. No, we're good. You can send them home. I'm like, I don't think so. Not yet. And I'm glad I kept them because they have a tendency, no, we can take care of business. But I'm like, no. And what you guys are going to start doing, you're going to start taking your normal days off now, even though we have these relief officers here, because I wanted to get them into as much of a pattern of normalcy as quickly as I possibly could.
yeah.
They don't need to see all this all the time. They need to take care of themselves and their mental wellness too. And that's probably the best thing we're doing. As far as the morale goes, though, as much as my sworn employees were amazing, my civilian employees were beyond. I can't say enough nice things about them because my property evidence technician, my administrative assistant, who is also my accreditation manager, and our records clerk, they did anything that the city needed them to do. And it's an all hands on deck thing. And it's like, well, no one says that's not my job. No one says I have no idea how to do that. They just said, what do you need help with?
Yeah.
And like my civilian staff they're in this portable office with myself and my captain and my detective right now, and nobody complains. And they could. It's not the best working conditions right now, but we know there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel eventually. But we're coming up on the 7th month mark, so
Yeah. And it's, when it comes to wellness, one of the things that you said is, I think it's amazing and it's often overlooked how powerful a thank you and a verbal like I care about you and like those small things of like making sure that you see them and say I appreciate you, thank you. I think it's incredible how much that can impact someone's wellness and their drive to keep going. It keeps them in the fight when they feel like someone cares about them. And one of the things you said, it's kind of all like circling back, is you had people doing that for you
yeah.
too. You had
Yep.
people reaching out to you and saying, you got this, chief. We
Yep.
believe in you. Keep
Yep.
going. You're the guy for the job. And I think
Yep.
it's also important to remember that, as much as every agency is a team and a family in a way, it doesn't end there. It extends far beyond, and it's the entire law enforcement profession. Like you are all a team. And I think that or even maybe especially in times of tragedies, when you start to see that, you start to
Yeah.
see everyone coming together of like,
Right.
we've got you. And maybe we don't work at your agency, but you are, like you said, a fellow brother and sister in law enforcement, and like we've got you and we are a team. And so I think that there's some beauty in that, even though this story is unfathomable of what you guys had to go through. I think that that aspect of it, of coming together as a team and seeing the best in each other, in the hardest of times.
I will say that, and I'm remiss in saying this, and I was trying to recall the story as best as possible. But during this storm, there's 14 different police departments here in Pinellas County, and 3 of them directly, actually 4 of them directly work in the Barrier Islands. And I had a chief from the Pinellas Park Police Department, Adam Geisenberger, call me during the storm surge when it was still going up, saying how many people do you need and when do you need them
Mm,
and where. And I wasn't even focused. I was still in, I don't want to use the term shock. I wasn't in shock, but I'm still kind of absorbing what is happening and the scope of what this disaster is going to look like. And he's already offering help. And he did. And Pinellas Park was really the first ones to come and help us. And that was amazing. I will never forget that. Um, but we do take care of one another. And I heard from, like I said, no, I'm not kidding. I heard from everybody, and I tried to answer everybody back eventually, and they said a lot of people were texting saying, "Hey, I know you're busy, but," and I mean, former city managers, former police chiefs, friends, everybody in the law enforcement community, and everybody said, what can I do? What do you need? What do you need? And I've never ever in my life been in a position of need before. I've always been the giver. I've always been the one to help. The very first hurricane I worked a relief for was Hurricane Andrew that hit Miami in 1992. I was in Naples for 2 years as an officer, and Andrew literally ripped through the neighborhood that I grew up in. And Hurricane Andrew was horrific. And um, I led a relief effort down there. I took some equipment down there, and then ended up working down there a couple months later. So that's the very first storm I worked. And now 35 years, 32 years later, here I am, and I'm the one that needed help. And I never, ever expected myself to be in that position, both personally and professionally. It's like I had a 3-day period there where the only dry place I could go that wasn't damaged by water was my car. I had my office in the back of my car. I had everything that I had evacuated out of my office was in my Ford Explorer. So it's a very, very humbling experience, and it really tests all your leadership skills. And like I said, we've lost some officers since the storm. However, and I think this is amazing, we actually hired people during the storms. We did an interview, and we hired a guy, and we did his final interview in the EOC.
Mhm.
And it was funny because I'm the final interview for the hiring process. And I remember saying to the captain, I said, put him in a car, go drive him around the island, see if he still wants to work here. Because this is something he wanted to do prior to the storm. And he came back like an hour later. I said, oh, I guess I'm thinking to myself, he left. An hour later, they come back. He goes, yep, he wants to do it even more than before. So I'm like, okay, you're in. So, it's kind of a rebirth of our community here. There's a lot of homes that had to be torn down, but there's going to be new ones that are going to be built. We have a lot of our business area that was damaged, but a lot of it's going to be rebuilt. We did pretty well during spring break. Some of the hotels were closed, some of them were able to open. So we're starting to bounce back, but we still need a police and fire department. So the city is going through that right now to figure out what they're going to do with us.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of things popped up in my head. One, that you said like all roads led to this. And
Yep.
I believe that in life. I think that all of the hard things, all of the training, all of your experience leads you to where you are, and it does prepare you as you go on. And you maybe didn't know it, but everything that you did in your career did prepare you for this moment. And I know that when we talked offline, you said it's not the storm, it's the aftermath, and it's like how you rebuild. And I want to
Right.
think of this like in the context of wellness and of leadership. So I know that you do a mentorship program
Right.
for new officers, and you talk about leadership and, kind of how you can um, build future leaders. How, maybe give us a little explanation of how you do that and the things that you incorporate, and maybe some of um, maybe the lessons that you instill in them, or the training, and how you incorporate wellness into that.
Like I said in the very beginning of our talk, we used to chew people up and spit them out. We wanted people to conform to the way we were. I remember leaders, when I'm very young in my career, it's my way or the highway. This is the way you're going to do it. And I just don't think that's a successful leadership path right now. I tell the new officers, I said, look at the people you've been in your life, either leaders or teachers or people that you've admired, and people you say, well, I want to be like that person, or I really like that. And I also tell them, I said, you're going to learn from leaders, either good leaders or bad leaders, because you're going to learn from bad leaders just as much as good leaders by saying, I'm not going to do it that way. Or I know how I felt when they talked to me this way. Or, they didn't really care about me. I could tell I was a number and not a person. I think all of that has come full circle now, where we realize how valuable our assets are. And I hope it's not because it's so hard to fill the ranks now. There's just not a lot of people out there. And what I'm talking about, you talk to many police chiefs, and I'm sure everybody talks about training and retention, or recruiting, retention, and everything else. And it's like, there's not a long line of people beating down our door to be police officers right now. So we really need to protect who we have. So in this mentorship, it's I believe in giving people tasks. When I first got here at this agency, and some other agencies I've been around, is they'll have like, you have to be a sergeant to be in charge of this, you have to be this rank to be in charge of this. And I'm like, why? Let's give this task. Okay, here, you can be in charge of the bicycle patrol. It doesn't matter, you don't have to be a sergeant. Here, you're in charge of the bicycle maintenance, getting them going, make sure everybody's trained, make sure the equipment's all right. And you give them those tasks, and you see how they perform in that task. Do they fail? Are they Are they okay with that? Okay, you're in charge of all our specialty equipment, our Marine Patrol boat, our UTV, anything we need, you're in charge of that. How do they do with that? Okay, you're in charge of vehicle inspections. How do they do with that? How do they do with that task? Are they excelling in that? Okay, let's give them more responsibility. So I just believe in giving people responsibilities and see how they're acting with that. As far as mentorship, is you tell them the good stories and bad stories. This is never, I don't know anybody who's been through their law enforcement career without a little bit of a bumpy road. Everybody had one or two or three or four bad experiences, or, oh gosh, I wish I would have done it this way. I mean, I've had that as a chief. I've had to back up, put it in reverse. Okay, let's try it this way instead. I had a lot of things, and I like to say, getting out of my own way. You see, I have facial hair, I have a beard. That's not a big deal. I was a high and tight haircut guy. I was in the honor guard for years. I was, military style haircut, no facial hair for a long time, except the obligatory cop mustache I had to have when I first started. But it's one of those things where, do you not want to do that as a leader because it bothers you, or is it really bad for the organization? There's this ongoing debate: beards, facial hair, tattoos, ponytails for female officers, this never ending debate that we have when the chiefs at the chiefs conferences and stuff like that. It's all part of leadership. Is that a you problem, or is it really a problem with them wanting to do that?
Yeah.
It's like, it's little things like that. And so when you're mentoring people to be future leaders, you let them know, hey, here's a situation where I did this and I should have done it this way, but I learned because of this. You tell them the good and the bad. You don't just stand up in front of them and beat your chest and go, you got to do it this way or that way. And I think the most important thing is you have to manage everybody differently. And if you really know your people and I've always said the most important people in your organization are your field training officers and your sergeants, because those are the ones that are going to be helping you with the culture of the agency.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate that I work for a small agency. And if I have a communication problem in my agency, that's my fault, because I can literally reach out and touch everybody in my agency in a day or two without, changing my schedule and literally going face to face with everybody. But in a larger agency, and the chiefs of larger agencies will know exactly what I'm talking about. By the time the message gets down to the line officers, it's not anything close to what you had intended.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just all part of the leadership and the mentorship. And you give them challenges, and you help them, and you don't tell them how to do it. I never tell them how to do it, because they come up with a different way. And if you like it and say, okay, you could save a lot more time if you would have thought about this. But you say, I need you to get from point A to point B. Don't tell them how to get there, because you're not really learning. And they need to learn by failing too. Failure is not a bad thing. You learn from failing. My God, I failed. Like I said, I failed a bunch of times, and look where I am now.
Well, I would argue that you learn more in the failure, and
Absolutely.
and there's so many like ways I want to go with this. My head is like kind of going in all these different directions, but you talked about offline, you said like blue sky, gray sky,
Yep.
like when things are going great, like they're great, but it's like, how do you respond when things are not going great?
Right.
And for me personally, my greatest life lessons and my greatest growth has come from the hard times, from the failures, from the mistakes. And I would argue that, and it's not that I wouldn't say I encourage myself to mess up, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. And I think
Right.
like so often everyone's afraid to fail, so they don't do things, or um, they think that it's the worst case scenario is failing. And sometimes it's a best case scenario, as long as it's not like, lethal, or there isn't anything like, but sometimes
Right.
it's the best way to learn and to grow.
Right.
And so I love that you said that. I also love that you empower your people to take on different roles and to try things. And um, it sounds to me that what you also said is, over time, as a leader yourself, you had to adapt to the times, and you had to adapt to your
Oh
organization.
yeah.
And how important do you think that is as a leader to,
Oh,
have an open mind and be able to adapt?
you're going to drive yourself nuts if you don't adapt. You absolutely have to be flexible. I don't know any successful leader that isn't able to adapt. I just don't see it. I know, like I said, and I've already said, my way or the highway and stuff like that, but you can't manage people now. They don't respond to that anymore.
Mhm.
We're in a different generation, and we'll have seminars and stuff about managing different generations and stuff. And it's all about listening to people, understanding what motivates them.
Hmm.
And everybody's different. And that's what I tell my sergeant. I said, you have to know your squad. You really have to know. You can't. They can't be numbers for you. You need to know. What's going on at home. What's going on in their personal life. Is their dog sick? Is their child sick? Just the minutia stuff. You have to know your people to know how they're going to react. Um, marital problems, anything that's going to affect them and then can affect them on the job, which could, all of a sudden you have a great officer who's very productive and stuff, and all of a sudden they're doing nothing. They're doing the bare minimum. They're not pulling cars over anymore. They're not, generating self-generated activity. You got to find out what's going on there. Is it a wellness issue? Is it something at home? Is it both? Is it something at home that's causing a wellness issue? And what can we do as an agency, if you truly say we're a family, okay, you got to think how you would treat your family member. If you have a family of four, family of five, if this really is, and you say, "Oh, we're a family here, law enforcement, we're a family," well, then you got to take care of your family members. You can't talk the talk if you don't walk the walk. You can't say we're family. We're if you're just you can't just exit people out of it and just say, "Well, the heck with them. I hope they quit or hope they go somewhere else." You can't do that. You really have to take care of them.
Yeah, and I love that you said that it's not a one size fits all. And I think that when you can take a look at the individual and you do have the opportunity to know them and to know what's going on and to know what motivates them, then not only can you give the appropriate resources, because some people, like, you and I, we like to go to the gym. Some
Right.
people that might not be their thing, and that's not going
Right.
to help them with wellness because it's not their thing. That's not what motivates them. So we need to be able to give the appropriate resources. But more than that, you have the ability now to see early warning signs in people. If you don't know people and you don't take the time to become invested in who they are, and like you said, what motivates them, then you're never going to be able to see those signs of them going from productivity to non-productivity.
Exactly.
And so I think that, and of course, like as organizations get bigger, maybe that's harder for one individual person to do. But then I think that comes back to what you said about training leaders within your organization to know their squads, to know their people, so that they are the ones that are looking out for, the people around them and their immediate team.
And that's I think that's as current leaders, our job is to my job as a police chief is to train the next generation of leaders. Yes, I'm leading an agency. Yes, I'm the agency head. I take my number two, my captain, with me everywhere. He goes to the meetings I go, unless they said they don't want any number twos or whatever there. He goes everywhere with me. I'm training him to step into my shoes when I'm gone. And it goes that way all the way down the line. That's exactly what our jobs are when we're leaders. And we need to train them into this wellness thing. It has to become a part of our culture now, and that has to go from top down. It has to go top down because everybody looks to see. And in going back to the storm, and I should have said this too, is going back to him. I made sure that my officers always saw that I was tuned in and I was ready to roll. I wasn't sitting anywhere with my arms crossed in the corner. I wasn't saying woe was me because my house was messed up. A lot of people didn't even know. People were coming up. There's actually a pretty funny story where my captain was one of the officers came up and he was complaining that he was just describing some, let's say, incredibly minimal damage at his house, and he was lamenting it, and the captain kind of ushered him away from it because he realized that no, 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 don't talk about your wet carpet here, when the chief has his home is gutted right now down to the studs. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny how we protect one another and we know what's going on, and I really feel that that's all part of the culture, but it's got to be top down because it has to be buy-in from the top, because your officers can tell if you're just talking the talk. They can tell.
Well, I think it's your job to be able to see the BS,
Oh, yeah,
and
100%.
you can see when people are not authentic or they're
Right.
just checking a box or their actions don't match their words. And so I
Right.
agree with you. I think that regardless if you're a chief or if you're in another form of leadership or just like on a human level, I think that what you say matters and you should follow that up with action always.
Right.
Or don't say it,
Right.
because I think that people do, they see you in a different light if they know that you're full of it,
Right.
you know?
100%. And once you lose that, you're never getting that back.
Yep.
You can't lose your credibility with your people.
Yep.
They're going to know. They're going to know right away whether you care about them or not. And it's the little things, like you said. I made a point to shake everybody's hand, and this is, like I said, my officers, my civilian staff, the officers from outside the city that came in to help. I looked everybody dead in the eye and I said, it really means a lot. And it was emotional for me when these cops are coming up to help you. Like I said, I've never been on the receiving end of any help before in my life until now, and it's emotional when you see that, because they're coming to help you, and they're sincere and they're genuine, because they're not here in the best conditions. They're not here staying in a hotel on the beach, putting their feet in the water. They're staying in a bunkhouse with sketchy air conditioning and eating warmed up food, and it's not great for me either. But like you said, we take care of one another too.
Yeah. Two last questions for you.
Yes.
One is, what's next? And, maybe what did this event do for the future of your organization? Like, what do you think, after the rebuilding stages? Because obviously, I know that you guys are still kind of in the thick of trying to get back to that normal, trying to get back to, your buildings and
You're right.
what do you think is next, and what do you have in the works for building out your mentorship program or your wellness program to help support your agency moving forward?
I would say what's next and I'll steal this quote from my captain, because it's the rebirth of Treasure Island, because Treasure Island, as it existed prior to September 26th, doesn't exist anymore, and that's the reality of it. I mean, this city was established over in over 50 years ago. Sorry, 70 years ago. My bad. And that's gone now. And the rebirth is going to be, and the good thing is we're right in the thick of it with the community, and that's what I tell my officers too. As these businesses are coming back online, we're there. We do a park walk and talk program where the officers get out and they park and walk and talk to the businesses and stuff. So the
Awesome.
first time somebody has an encounter with my officer, it isn't because they're calling 911. They're have them on friendly basis, get a lot of good information that way. There's a lot of good back and forth that happens, and we celebrate these, and we call them small victories. We celebrate these small victories. The restaurant opens that we haven't been able to go to in months, and we know, and a lot of these people live on the island too, these business owners, and say, hey, how's your house? And it was funny how the conversation was. It was hilarious. You'd come up to somebody, hey, how you doing? Oh, we're okay. We're this, and everybody's safe. But yeah, I said, how high was your drywall cut? Do you have a 2 foot cut or 4 foot cut? How much drywall? All the whole thing. Did it go above your sockets? Did they, this is how everybody starts conversations now. And how far is, like, I know the percentage of my house that's finished. So like I said, I'm about 85% right now. And that's what everybody else says. Hey, where are you at? Oh, I'm about 70%. But as we move forward here, we're going to be building ourselves up with the community. We're going to get a new public safety facility for police and fire. And I'm saying, this will be a crowning achievement for the city. This will be something that everybody can be proud of. This is a city building that will exist for 50 to 70 years, long after our lifetimes. This is a legacy building. And so we're kind of building that legacy along with the community. It's a rebirth for our agency. Like I said, we've lost some officers, but we have officers coming on here too. And I tell them, you're here in an exciting time, because you're going to be here for this really rapid change to this community. And I think what we've proven to ourselves going through this is how resilient we really are. Like, in all honesty, we're going to stand up and go, we kind of chuckle and we make jokes about it now, because you have to laugh at certain situations. Like, yeah, we had 2 hurricanes in 10 days. Bring it. What else are you going to throw at us? Bring it on right now. We look at a blizzard up north. We're like, that's nothing, or something like that. We're like, bring it. But it's something. I tell you what, though, we are really walking a tightrope here, because they call it hurricane fatigue, as some sociologists have called it here. But I think it's a form of PTSD. But hurricane season starts June 1st. And I'm telling you, if we're in the cone of uncertainty, I don't even know how people are going to start to act around here, because I don't even know what's going to happen. The whole community is like on, I don't want to say pins and needles, but it's like, we're exhausted. Everybody here is just tired. The officers are, everybody's just in this mode, but everybody keeps going. So, and the future with the mentorship, we want to expand that. I think we've done a really good thing in the Tampa Bay Chiefs, where we're just started like a command school for, it's actually sergeants and above, and they're getting people from in the Tampa Bay area is a really large area with 5 counties. So, and we're all teaching that with instructors from within, because we all realize on the Tampa Bay Chiefs Association that there's a lot of really good quality leaders here that have a lot of good things to offer in stories to tell. and ways to learn and help mentor these younger people who are going to be stepping into our shoes when we're gone. So that's kind of where the future is right now.
I love that. And there's a few things that stuck out to me. Like, one, I think that you don't know how strong you are until you go through something really hard. And
Right.
so for you guys to have that like lighthearted mentality of like bring it, it's
Yeah.
hard things prepare you for hard things. And
Right.
so that is a testament to your resiliency. And now you know how to do that moving forward. If something like that, fingers crossed that never happens again in your lifetime. But if
Yes.
something were to happen, you're prepared. But I also think that people often overlook the power of community relations and how that impacts mental health of officers, like being able to have people say hi and ask you about your house and have those conversations. And you're not only interacting with people on their worst days, you're also interacting with people in joyous times, in normal times. I think that it has a huge impact on wellness. And also, I don't know if you know that you said this, and this might be on the edge of woo. Like maybe people are like not into this word, but I'm going to normalize it through these conversations. But for you to like have the small victories, it's gratitude.
Yeah.
And that's so important to focus on the good things because there can be so many bad things to focus on and so many hard things to focus on. And if you're only experiencing and focusing on bad things, that's going to be your reality. That's where your headspace is going to be. And so if you can have those moments throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month to say, hey, like we went from 70% to 75%, like we are making progress, that's a win. Or this restaurant just opened up. I'm so excited to go eat their Reuben. Like they have the best
Yes.
Reuben in town. Like having
Yep.
those little, I think that is mental health, that is wellness.
I'll give you an example of that. This is going to sound really, really goofy, but it shows you when you're around nothing but destruction. And we had a pile of debris. I'm sitting in our city hall building right now, and we had a pile of debris that was about 20 feet high, and I may be underestimating this. I can't even tell you how long it was. It was huge. It was the central collection point for all the debris in the city. And now remember, so the water washed over everything, so it kills landscaping, it kills trees, it kills grass, it kills everything because it's salt water. Well, we had an oak tree in the park, which is close to where our temporary facility is, and it looked like it was dead. It looked like a tree, 2 months after the storm, it looked like a tree in a horror movie, outside of a haunted house because there's no leaves on it. And all of a sudden we started, and they said, "Oh, we got to cut the tree down. It's going to fall against the building." And all of a sudden I started to say, "Wait a minute. Hey, there's some leaves on this thing. Hey, this thing's coming back." And goofy us, like I said, small victim, when you're around destruction and stuff, you're looking for any sign of life, rebirth, anything, the sea turtles coming back to the beach, the dolphins swimming in the canals, anything like that. You're just looking for life and stuff to get back to normal and to see a little glimmer of hope. And this oak tree, I'm looking at it now through this window, it's got a whole bunch of green leaves on it now. And everybody thought this tree was dead. So it's like, hey, there's resilience for you. But this is something we're looking at every day just to say, hey, this thing's still alive. Hey, is this tree going to make it? So, it's small victories. It's when you're around nothing but destruction, you look for light at the end of the tunnel, the end of the rainbow, whatever expression you want to use.
Yeah, and I think it's also like a testament to anyone who's listening. Maybe you're not experiencing what you guys experienced. Maybe you didn't have um, a hurricane or, mass destruction within your community, but it's the same thing with out on the streets with crime. Like if everything seems bad, if it's call after call after call after call that's bad, you still have the ability to, and it goes back to what you said before, like you have control over your mindset.
Right.
And you can take a moment to see the light, and to see the tree that's growing or,
Right.
the win that your kid had in their softball game or whatever it is and having those moments. So I think that anyone who's listening to this can relate to that and to say, hey, like your reality might be mostly bad, but
Well,
there's also good.
and not only that, I think there's people in communities all over the place, and they'll know exactly. I'm preaching to the choir here with other chiefs and other law enforcement leaders listening, but there's good people in every community, and you
Mhm.
just have to find them and seek them and know that they appreciate the hard work that your men and women are doing out there. They really do appreciate it. The majority of people support us and appreciate what we do. I cannot even tell you the accolades we heard from our residents after the storm. I mean, they were mad at everything in the city trying to get permits to rebuild. They were mad at everything except police and fire, and they couldn't say that enough. And I told my and I'm telling my officers, I was getting emails, and I've mass forward them out to all my officers so they could see it. Not coming from me. I didn't want to send an email from me saying, "Hey, this person said." I wanted them to read exactly what these people were saying about them, and the differences. Oh, they brought me water when I was cleaning my house out, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget, Officer so and so doing this, and they helped move this in front of my house. And I said that was fine with officers, that do whatever you need to do. So, there's good people everywhere, and they really, really do appreciate what we do because they know it's a really hard job.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate your time so much. And I have one final question and then
Yes.
we'll wrap for the day. But what words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career when it comes to their wellness? Maybe it's something that, you wish you knew or something that's
Yep.
helped you.
Absolutely. Um, Wellness for me, I was not a big sleep guy. I didn't sleep enough, which I kind of found out later on in life when I started to really age a little bit. I've been able to bounce back. I've always been physically fit. That's fine. When you're young, you can bounce back at everything. You can get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, work a 12-hour shift, you're good to go. Um, I found that sleep is very important. I would have gone back and done that. You have to absolutely make sure. I mean, my wife is my sounding board, but I can't hit her with that every single day.
Mm,
When you get to unplug, go be a husband, be a father, be anything you need to be there for your family. Make sure you carve out time for that and for your officers as well. If you can do something for your officers, if you know their kid has a soccer tournament coming up, and if you can give that person the day off and just pay somebody overtime to cover that shift, it's the small things in life that people are going to look back and have regrets from later. You have to take time for yourself. Absolutely. I haven't been able to do it lately, but me and the wife are going on a vacation. That was something we look forward to every year. We do some traveling. I have a vacation planned in the next month and a half. I'm really excited about it. We both need it. We both really, really need to get out and see some scenery other than construction work and stuff like that. But that's what I would say. I said, take time for yourself, wellness, take care of yourself, health, mind, everything is it's all intertwined because that's going to affect your longevity in this career
yeah.
and how long you can keep giving back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I know I took way more time than I asked, so
Yep,
I appreciate you and you sharing
absolutely.
your insights and the story of what you guys went through organizationally. And I'm so glad that you are in the rebuilding and you guys are almost there. And I'm rooting for you and I appreciate everything that you do. And thank you. That's all I can
Thank
say is
you.
thank you.
Thanks for having me. I
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Of course.